Start live on the.
Welcome everyone. We'll start with our arati. We'll do some singing, meditation, and then have a talk on the many manifestations of the Mother. We still have our lighter.
Yes. Oh, there's one. No. Those are for her.
All right, do you have some
Music for us? Yeah, we can do that. So if you have your little books there, first of all, we want to welcome everybody. If you have your little books here, we're going to do a couple songs here.
You want to do?
No, I better not. It's going to be too much trouble. We'll start with, they have it as Jai Sri Durga will be the first one. Then we're going to do Will That Day Come to Me, Mother? And then we'll do Ramakrishna Sharana. Those three. And they're in here.
oh, those.
Here, let's get you one, Swami. Here's some. Since it is, the service is dedicated to Divine Mother. Here, actually, I better sit this in. People are gonna see the top of my head, I guess, and that's okay for me, but I'd probably prefer that. And that's me. Okay. So this is a song that originally was to Ma Saraswati, but I kind of modified it a little bit so we could add all of the four deities that we have on the altar. So we'll start with Ma Kali, and then we'll move to Ma Durga, and then Ma Lakshmi, and Ma Saraswati. So we'll follow that. I think it's in the book that way. And I guess I better start with the invocation. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Oh, peace, peace, peace. Okay. It's a pretty simple chant. So Om Aim, Jaima, Kali, or Durga, Lakshmi, or Saraswati. So it's quite simple. And it's from Krishna Das. The next one, Will That Day Come to Me, Ma, is one by Ram Prasad. And it's in English, translated by Paramahansa Yogananda and kind of configured for the Western words. So, but it is Ram Prasad's original song in English. So that's Will That Day Come to Me, Ma.
Page 16.
16, lucky 16. everywhere. Sri Radha sunset, Divine Mother everywhere stays. Sri Radha sunset, my Mother everywhere stays. Blind eyes see the one hiding everywhere. Blind eyes see the one hiding everywhere. Will that day come to be mine? Will that day come to be mine? When saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. When saying, Mother dear, my eyes will flow tears. Heart's rose will blossom for darkness will steal away. Heart's rose will blossom for darkness will steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Mama, steal away. Steal away, steal away, steal away, Mama, steal away. 1,000 maidens to declare, divine mothers everywhere. 1,000 maidens to declare, divine mothers everywhere. Sweet Radha sunset, divine mother everywhere stays. Sweet Radha sunset, my mother everywhere stays. Blind eyes see the mom hiding everywhere. Blind eyes see the mom hiding everywhere. Blind eyes see the mom hiding everywhere. Okay, and final would be Ramakrishna Sharanam, and there's different symbols and things. If anybody wants to play along, we can pass them. Are they all passed down now?
Yeah, plus.
Okay, good. So we can all join in as you wish. In our key. Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam Vipani Kevalam, Vipani Kevalam, Vipani Kevalam, Sharanam Vipani Kevalam, Vipani Kevalam, Vipani Kevalam, Sharanam Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam Sharanam to Ham, Kevalam, Kripa hi Kevalam, Kripa hi Kevalam, Sharanam, Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam, Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam, Sharana Daitoham, Sharana Daitoham, Sharana Daitoham, Mahate. Sharana Daitoham, Sharana Daitoham, Sharana Daitoham, Mahate. Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam, Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Namo. Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Sri Gurave, Namo Namo. Jai Jai Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Sharanam, Prabhu Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Sharanam, Ram Krishna Ram Krishna Jaya Jaya Ram Krishna Ram Krishna Sharanam Ram Krishna Sharanam
Strong, small space.
Do you want lights down a little or?
Yeah, we can do a moment of chanting now.
Okay.
Meditation. Sano Samahe Karavamai Tejam Navami Namaste Vishavamai Om Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us and guide us to the strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with all. Om peace, peace, peace. Good evening. So our topic today is the many manifestations of the mother. Now, as we've talked about in other lectures, that Shiva and Shakti, or Brahman and Shakti, are really one. And so all the deities ultimately come from that oneness that's behind the universe. And so there are some similar concepts in some of the other non-Abrahamic traditions in the world. For example, in Taoism, Lao Tzu says that the Tao is one. It was in the beginning and it will remain forever. It is eternal and immutable. It is omnipresent, bodiless, immaterial, and imperceptible by the senses. It is nameless and indestructible. We look at it and do not see it, and we name it the equable. We listen to it and do not hear it, and we name it the inaudible. We try to grasp it, and we do not get hold of it, and we name it the subtle. With these three qualities, it cannot be made subject of description. Hence, we blend them together and obtain the one. It is called the mysterious abyss of existence. It is the mother of all phenomena of heaven and earth. It existed before the personal God. It is the producer of God, just as in Vedanta, we know that Ishvara, or the personal God, is the first manifestation of Brahman. That was from the complete works of Swami Atmavidyanandaji, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. So in this, we find the same kind of concept of the infinite, undivided, unchanging, indescribable reality, which we call Brahman, and they call the Tao. And one with that is this ability to manifest, and that's called the mother of all phenomena, and it manifests all that is. A similar concept, although a little bit harder to pin down, is the concept in ancient Egyptian thought of the Mut. Mut is the Egyptian goddess of motherhood, creation, fertility, war, and protection. Now we're going to hear those same themes over and over again. And her name literally means mother. And she was the primal deity associated with the primordial waters. That's a familiar theme too, is that there's waters often used as a metaphor for something that's kind of undefined and not with any particular form. And so the primordial waters, called Nu, from which everything in the world was born. She came in prominence during the new kingdom of Egypt as a result of her relationship with the god Amun. And she is often depicted as a woman with a head, sometimes somewhat human-like, but sometimes more like a lioness and a vulture, or a woman with wings and wearing a headdress. Now let's see if I can bring that picture up. All right, here she and Amun are. How did we get it off? Oh, let's. I remember I put this on the side.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that might help. Yeah. It believes that the pharaohs were descended from this pair of gods, Amun and Mut. And so the pharaoh is pictured in between these two deities. Now, I found this lecture very frustrating to prepare because the goddess concept is very mutable, and many different depictions can be found and different names for what seems like they ought to be the same concept. And in reality, all these mother deities really are from the same source. And so we try to divvy it up, and in the process of divvying it up, we simply make it confusing. But we do this because, of course, it's hard to grasp the infinite, undivided, unchanging reality. Now, I was going to show some other pictures from Egyptian mythology, but I didn't. I decided not to. The other frustrating thing was it was very difficult to find things that were in common or public domain and public usage. All the good ones seem to disappear as soon as I put that filter on. But you often see the Ankh as something being held by the various Egyptian goddesses, and it's the key of life. And it also stands for water, and that indicated that water was also the source of life. And we know that, when we're looking for life out in the cosmos, we always want to find a planet that's got water on it because we feel that water is the essence of life. So that was just a couple of examples. And of course, I could have spent the whole lecture looking at non-Hindu traditions and mother concepts in those. Now, the one thing we need to keep in mind as we look at this is the psychological idea from Carl Jung, the famous psychologist of the last century, who talked about archetypal energies. And these are sort of patterns of energies that we find in the universe and within ourselves. And so he was interested in this from the psychological standpoint because he knew that the microcosm reflected the macrocosm and vice versa. And one of the main archetypes that he talked about was the mother archetype. And what are some of the qualities of the mother archetype? Well, some of it's fairly obvious. The mother has children. She is the source of the next generation or newly created things. And once she has the children, she nurtures the children and supports the children. She protects the children from dangers. If there's anything threatening the children, she will fight to protect the children. And she also teaches and mentors the children. And she imparts the culture to the next generation. And psychologically, Jung said that the mother archetype expressed itself in a desire to be of service and to contribute to other people's happiness, to being attentive to other people's needs, and to being generous, and to being a gift giver. So, of course, we see this trait, as Jung pointed out, in both men and women. Both genders can express these qualities, and they're expressing that mother archetype because these archetypes can be expressed by people of both genders. So she's figuratively the source of all life. And she represents love, that nurturing love that we need from the mother. And it's interesting that, when we talked about the near-death experiences, how nearly everybody spoke of this overwhelming feeling of love that they felt in that near-death experience. And so this is one of the qualities of the mother archetype. Even though they might see a masculine deity, that's really a feature of the feminine archetype. So she also has a very authoritative feeling to her, and she fosters growth. And so these are other things which define her. In fact, in Egypt, as we were talking about, there was the lineage was through the mother, the matriarchal lineage in the ruling class. It's interesting also when you think of the ruling monarchs of England, some of the greatest ones were the women, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, and so forth, the first and the second. So she also expresses a lot of empathy and compassion, and she's always looking for people that are in need and gives them what they need. And feeling appreciated is what makes her thrive. And so that's why it's important to worship mother images of God, because we want to make sure that God knows that we appreciate the things that we have. And the mother archetype possesses great generosity and reaches into all aspects of life. And so we see this in the mother archetype. We find that it's often a creative and sustaining type of image. Many traditions will assign a goddess to the dawn, because the dawn is the beginning of the light coming into the day, and we all know that the sunlight is what nurtures life on the planet. We also find that goddesses are associated with rivers, because the water from the rivers is associated with life on the planet. They're associated with the earth, because it's the water combined with the earth that gives you fertility, gives you crops, and allows you to survive. She's also often associated with a warrior of sorts. So the warrior goddesses are frequently associated with protecting the particular tribe or country or group. So some examples again from other cultures, we have Athena, who was the goddess of wisdom. That's another feature we find often, is that as we mentioned, that the mother archetype nurtures and teaches the next generation. And so frequently goddesses are associated with wisdom and knowledge, civilization, imparting the culture, and also various useful crafts such as weaving and being able to make various objects, very, very practical kinds of things like that. In Greek mythology, Eos was the dawn, another Greek goddess. And then, of course, we have the corresponding ones in Roman mythology. For example, Minerva corresponds to Athena as the goddess of wisdom. Then, going on to Demeter, we know that Demeter presides over crops and grains and the fertility of the earth. And so she's the one that provides blessings to the people by providing a harvest. And so oftentimes harvest festivals are also associated with mother deities. And of course we have 4 Navaratris, and depending on where in India you are, 1 or 2 of those are probably going to also be associated with harvesting, or perhaps sowing the crops. So in various seasons, sometimes you're sowing the crops, sometimes you're harvesting the crops, depending on where you are and what kinds of weather you're going to have. So the goddesses are also associated with the cycles of life, birth and death. So both ends of the spectrum are associated with mother goddesses. And so we find the myths, for example, we have the myths of Persephone, who is assigned to the underworld for certain parts of the season and then comes back to the earth during the spring and then has to go back to the underworld and so forth. Or it's the same myth as Orpheus and Eurydice. So that explains the seasons and so forth. The Philippines also has a goddess of the dawn, but I couldn't find a picture of the goddess of the dawn that I could use, but I found a picture of a dawn in the Philippines. So this is just a good expression of that deity as an actual image. Then in the Persian mythology, we have Anahita, who is also a goddess of wisdom, portrayed here on this vase. Now, in the currently functioning religions, you could say, Hinduism and the things related to it, such as certain branches of Buddhism, like Tibetan Buddhism and so forth, are really the only major traditions that have retained this concept of the motherhood of God. Perhaps Shinto might also have some of these ideas. And of course, Native American traditions also have these ideas. But of the really major religions that we think of in the world, Hinduism is probably the best example of a religion that has retained this idea. And so let's keep in mind that in order to express things that we can't quite grasp intellectually, we use symbols. And it's said that in Hindu cosmology, symbolism is the bridge between the transcendent realm that we really can't put into words and can't express except experience through deep meditation, and this material world that we do understand and we do experience and we do or we were able to relate to. So there's this idea that there's this natural affinity between the ideas, the abstract ideas that we can't quite grasp, and the various forms that we find in the universe. And so the things that we cannot fully understand with logic and the rational mind, but things that can be assimilated by the unconscious and the non-rational mind, those are depicted in symbols, and that's why we use symbols for our deities for the concept of worship. Now, when you see some of these images of deities, again, it's a little frustrating because sometimes the general description doesn't necessarily match the image that you find, but there are many depictions of all of these different goddesses, and some of them will have various things in their hands. And it's interesting that one commentator said that the more hands they have, the further away they are from the actual infinite, undivided, unchanging reality that's behind it. The more manifested they are. They're more manifested and more explicit. So they're further from the absolute realm and more into the immediate realm. But they're often depicted with multiple limbs in order to hold multiple symbols. And so in order to try to express some of their infinitude, we give them multiple arms in order to hold various things. They might be holding an elephant goad, which is symbolic of goading us, you could say, into our spiritual practice, trying to give us incentives to practice spiritually and to give us control over things like anger that we will need to control in order to pursue our spiritual practice. They often will hold some sort of dagger or sword, which indicates the razor's edge of spiritual practice and how we have to be treading our spiritual path with great care. Sometimes they're holding a musical instrument of some sort, often a stringed instrument like a vina or a lute type instrument. And this is indicative of how sound vibration is at the essence of the universe and how there's a harmony in the universe that resonates with various sounds. And so musical instruments express that kind of harmony of vibration in the universe and how the whole universe is really created in a vibrational mode. Sometimes they're holding a kamandalu or a water jug, which indicates a fullness and generosity and also purity. Often we purify things with water. So when you're holding a water jug, it will indicate as the act of purification. Sometimes they're holding a mace called a gada in the Indian language. And that's usually a symbol of Vishnu. So often if a goddess is associated with Vishnu in some way, you might see her holding a mace, but it's also in general a symbol of sovereignty and the ability to control the cosmic order, which of course is what the deities do. They're controlling the cosmic order. Sometimes they're holding a sprig of rice or wheat or some other kind of grain, which is again the symbol that they give us the harvest, that the harvest is coming from the deities. And sometimes they're holding a little flag, a little emblem of some sort, which indicates that they are trying to make themselves known. They're holding up their little flag, and they want us to know that they are a source of charity and safety for us. Sometimes they are holding some sort of a club. Sometimes it might have a skull on it, and that indicates the impermanence and how everything goes through cycles and not everything lasts forever. There's also a shield, which indicates that they shield us from various difficulties. They're protecting us. This is especially a feature of the mother goddesses. And the damaru, which is that little sort of hourglass shaped drum, that again produces a vibration, which produces the sound of the universe being projected out. When it's also thought to be the union between masculine and feminine elements, which have to be together in order for the universe to be in manifestation. They often hold lotuses, which again symbolize spontaneous generation. Lotuses seemingly magically come out of nowhere, out of the mud, and they grow out of this sort of murky, muddy, dirty water, and then they come up out of the top, and they're perfectly pure and beautiful. And so it's this idea of how we're in this world, and we're kind of in the mire of the world, but we're striving to have a spiritual life and to manifest that spirituality and be pure in spite of being coming out of the world. And other things you might see are a conch or conch, depending on what continent you're on. They pronounce differently. But again, the conch shell has a spiral in it. And so the sound that comes out of the conch, again, is indicative of the spiraling and vibrational nature of the universe. It's considered to be the creative pranava or om sound. And it's also something that you might use to bring the troops to the battlefield, to fight off the enemies and to uphold dharma or right living. The chakra or a discus or a wheel is often a symbol of dharma as well. And it spins its beneficial influence in all directions. It's also sometimes used as a weapon. And so that's one of the symbols of upholding dharma. And sometimes you'll see an axe, which is indicating that we sometimes need to cut through our attachments to things in the material world in order to experience our spiritual nature. All right, so we're going to see some examples of mother deities here. And so keep in mind that all those symbolisms, and keep in mind all of the various aspects of the mother that we talked about, and see how they express themselves. And so basically, remember, we're expressing the infinitude in some sort of concrete way so that we can have some sort of comprehension of the many, many aspects of the infinite. So the symbols are going to try to connect us to the things that are beyond our normal ability to understand. But we're also going to remember that all of these mother aspects are really aspects of the one. They're not really separate goddesses. And as you remember when we talked about the Devi Mahatmyam a month ago, in that story, the great Devi is at one point unmanifest and has to become manifest. As then she out of herself manifests many forms, and then in another place she brings all those forms back into herself. So this is clear evidence that this concept is that we have many forms of the Devi, but they're really all one. And so infinitude can have an infinitude of expressions. but it does get kind of confusing. You'll find different names for the same type of deity, find different numbers of deities. We'll talk about different numbers of manifestations of the mother. Um, Now, these could be because of regional differences. Oftentimes, at least the scholars speculate that some of the indigenous goddesses that were found when the Indian subcontinent was sort of being unified under one kind of Hindu umbrella, they would simply be incorporated into the various Hindu ideas. And so rather than throwing anything out, Hinduism always said, well, this is just the same mother in another form. But then you end up with another form with another name that's associated with something that's associated with a different name and a different form in another part of the country, but it's really the same thing. So it becomes quite a tangle to look through. And then we also want to remember that the divine masculine and feminine are not really different, that we tend to split them apart. And so we talk about different gods and their counterpart, the feminine goddesses, but they're really one, and it's just our thinking that separates them. Swami Atmavidyanandaji gave a wonderful talk last Sunday on how both Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother are manifestations of Mother Kali. And so it was a fascinating lecture. I'm sure it's online if you want to look at it. So, of course, Navaratri, it was just celebrated last month, and that's Navaratri means 9 days, and so we have 9 forms of the Devi. And the Devi Mahatmya is also called the Chandi, and that is the name that's used for the mother most often in the Devi Mahatmya, interestingly enough. And she is a fiery power, you could say, of Brahman. And again, they're not sure whether this was a goddess from some other tradition that was then sort of sancretized, or whether it was something that was there from the beginning in the Aryan tradition. But it's interesting, in the Markandeya Purana, the Chandi Devi proclaims her preeminence, and she says, I resemble in form Brahman. From me emanates the world, which has the spirit of Prakriti and Purusha. I am empty and not empty. I am delight and not delight. I am knowledge and ignorance. I am Brahman and not Brahman. So that explains the sort of indefinable quality of the formless deity, which then is given this particular representation in a form. And again, you can find many different representations of Chandi. This is just one picture that I happened to find that was available. And the name Chandi is often used synonymously with Ambika or Durga or one of the other names of the Devi that indicates the more universal concept of the Devi. Now, of course, when the incarnations come, they always come in pairs. They come. We have Rama and Sita, and we have Radha and Krishna, and Ramakrishna, and Sarada Devi, and so forth. And so these avatars come in pairs. And later on, we're going to see that when, as you remember in the Chandi, the various gods combined their powers into the great Devi and gave their various weapons and ornaments to her. And so there's a whole list of goddesses that have the same or related name to the male aspect that they're a counterpart of. All right, so let's look at these traditional 9 forms of the Devi that are celebrated on the days of Navaratri. This is Shailaputri, the first manifestation, literally the daughter of the mountain. And so, as you might expect, she's often associated with Sati and Parvati, who are considered the daughters of the mountain and the first wife of Sita. Sati is the first wife of Shiva, and considered the mother of nature. And she often rides on a bull. She's holding a trident, so you can see her relationship with Shiva, the same kind of mount, and she's holding the trident. So, and notice that she only has two arms, so we know that she's closer to the transcendent. She's not manifesting a lot of differentiation here. The next one is Brahmacharini. There we go. There she is. Brahmacharini, of course, is the embodiment of spiritual discipline, austerity, one who is practicing a great deal of spiritual practices, gaining a great deal of power and grace from that. There is a water utensil in her hand, again, that would indicate purification, and a rosary, also indicating the concept of prayer. And again, she only has two arms. And so we have another very pure form of the Devi. It's hard to control something. There we go. Okay, so we have Chandraghanta, who is the third manifestation, and this form represents peace, tranquility, and prosperity. And she's often pictured with a crescent moon. Now, I don't see a crescent moon in this particular picture, but as I've said, oftentimes I would find a description and a picture at the same website, and the description didn't match the picture. So it gets very confusing. But you can see she does have a lotus, and she's got an arrow, and she's got this mace here, and a sword here, and a trident there, and a water pot there. So she's got a lot of these symbols that we talked about.
What is she riding on?
She's riding on a lion type, I think. Looks like a lion. All right, so she's said to be very vigilant and ready to do battle in any direction that it comes. Sometimes she has as many as 10 arms. Now let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, she does have 10 arms in this picture.
To hold the bones.
Yes. All right, so now we have Kushmanda, and Kushmanda is the creator of the universe. I don't know why this is on the fourth day. It seems like the creation should have been on the first day, but anyway. But she's the one that brings light into the darkness. And so she's fairly light-skinned, and she has this little sparkler image on her hand there. You see that? She's got a little image that looks like a 4th of July sparkler. It's illuminating light all over the place. And she's got the lotus in the other upper hand, and the water pot again, and the rosary, so, and the mace. So lots of different things that are very similar. And Skandamata. Skandamata would be the mother of Skanda, and Skanda is thought to be a chief of the warriors. Skanda is one of the sons of Shiva and Parvati, and you can see he's got several heads there. There were several mothers that adopted him, and he didn't want them to be jealous, so he manifested several heads so he could be nursed by all of those mothers. So that's the story behind Skandamata. This one way or the other. All right, so now we have Katyayani. Katyayani is worshipped on the 6th day, and she is generally a warrior goddess, and I'm really not sure if this is the correct figure because it doesn't seem to match the description. But I can tell you what the description usually is. She usually has more wild hair and many more arms than this, and each clutching a weapon, and she goes into battle. Now here's one that looks a little bit more like that, but here again she only has 4 arms. This is Kalaratri, who's very similar to Kali, a very Kali-like figure with the dark blue kind of skin. And she's got the same mudras, the mudras of protection and fearlessness, and the same axe that Kali would have. But she's riding a donkey here, so she has a different kind of mount than we would have for Kali. Then we have Mahagauri, who is the fairest skinned of them all. Her name means extremely white, referring to her luminous beauty, which radiates from her body. And it's thought that if we pay homage to Gauri, that all our past, present, and future sins will be washed away, giving us a sense of deep peace and calmness. This is Siddhidatri. Now, Siddhi means power, so we have Siddhidatri, the final form of Durga, which means the giver of supernatural powers. And she often rides a lion, but in this particular pose, she is sitting on a lotus. Now, the next group of mothers that we find is, we just had the 9 mothers of Navaratri. Now we have the Saptamatrikas, or the 7 divine mothers, which again was mentioned in the Chandi. The Chandi talks about the 7 mothers. And this is a very ancient tradition. We find pictures of 7 mothers in some of the ancient caves that we talked about several months ago. The cave temples that have carvings all over them that are centuries old. Some of them, the images are somewhat undifferentiated. They don't really have any kind of weapons or jewelry or things in their hands, so that you can't really tell them apart. They're just 7 female figures. This one, you can see that they all just have 2 arms, but it looks like she's got a veena here and a water pot there and a staff here, or a mace perhaps. This one's got the boar head, which we're going to talk about. And so sometimes they're differentiated and sometimes they're not. In some parts of India, there are 8 little mothers instead of 7. So they add 1 more. Again, perhaps that was a local mother deity that was added so that she wouldn't be left out. Who knows? This was, again, a rather frustrating sight that they had pictures of them, but then did not. This is all on the same site, and they did not match the description. So I tried to find some other pictures that seemed to match the descriptions a little better. So this is the ones that relate to the male deities giving their powers back to the Devi. Brahmani would be from Brahma, and Brahma, of course, has 4 heads, so Brahmani has 4 heads. So that makes perfect sense. We also find these fairly prominent in Tantric Buddhism and the other kinds of Tantric traditions as well. We find references to these 7 mothers with these 7 things, and of course there'd be different meditations and worships for those. Now here's another image where she's riding the traditional swan, and one head is facing away from you so that you don't actually see it. And this is her tree that she is associated with. Okay, this is Vaishnavi, and she's has this chakra in this hand here, and the conch here, and then she has again the two mudras. We find these two mudras very frequently. The mudra of fearlessness and the other one, uh, protection. Thank you.
You can see that far?
Oh, I can hear. Okay, then from Indra, we have Indrani, and again, we can see this looks like is that like a goad for the elephant? I can't remember exactly. It's really hard to see, but and she's holding some sort of a figure here, and I couldn't find out what it was. So again, it was rather frustrating. But Indrani is the associate, or the one that's associated with Indra. Here's a picture that's a little bit more stylized, but it's also a little more accurate in its depictions. Oh, here you have a Dorji, and yeah, this is like the elephant goat and the trident. And here she is with Indra. So we have Indrani and Indra together. This is Maheshwari. And I think I have a better picture here. Yeah, so here she's riding the more traditional mount of the bull, and you can see that frequently they're wearing a crown to indicate their sovereignty. And here's again, that looks like a lotus in her hand here, and the various mudras here that she's doing. She's usually fairly fair in complexion, and she has usually 3 eyes and 4 arms. The third eye is often imprinted in the forehead there. And she traditionally rides the bull, as we said. All right, now we have Komari. And again, I didn't find that this figure particularly matched the description, so I found a different one. And here she's riding her mount of the peacock. And normally it says that she's pictured with a red garland and red flowers. I couldn't find any picture of her like that, but she's in a yogic pose where she has one foot down and the other foot on her lap. That's a particular yogic pose that's frequently found in these images. And this description says that she usually has a more yellowish complexion, and she can have anywhere from 4 to 12 arms. So she's carrying various objects that are symbolic and of the various powers. Like she could be, in some poses, she might be carrying the water vessel and so forth. And the fearlessness and protection mudras. So she's got the fearlessness and protection mudras here. It's another image. You can see how different the images are. Now these all look kind of greenish to me. They don't look yellowish, but anyway. It seemed very odd. You see this picture and then they read the description of it and it doesn't match. Okay, this is Varahi from Varaha, who has the goat head, and This is, again, probably a slightly better picture with 8 arms and the crescent moon, the chakra here, the conch over here, the noose over here, the axe. And that looks, again, is that, looks like that's the thing you rest your arm on to meditate, but I can't tell. Let's see what it says here. She wields the hala and the shakti and is seated under a kalpaka tree. And her mount is usually the elephant, but again, I don't see an elephant here. All right. Chamunda, and she's a fierce goddess. Usually has 4 arms and also has the fearlessness and protection mudras. And sometimes she's carrying a skull in one hand. Here she is, she's got the skull there. And tends to be rather emaciated, with a sunken belly and a terrifying face. And her tree is the fig tree. We're doing on time here. Okay. Here she is doing battle with the demons, Munda and Chamunda. Then, so we've had the 9 mothers and the 7 mothers. Now we have the 10 Mahavidyas. And the 10 Mahavidyas are all pictured here. And their names are Kali, Tara, Sadashi, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi. Those are along the top. So that's Kali, Tara, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi, Kali, Tara, Sadashri, Bhuvaneshwari, Bhairavi. And then we have Chinnamasta, Dumavati, Bagalamukhi, Vatangi, and Kamala. All right, so here is the first one, other Kali, that we're all fairly familiar with. And this is interesting. This is like the pose that we have here with Shiva putting his hand under his head. The one we have in Hollywood is pretty much flat out. But interestingly, that's the same as we've got here. So again, she'd gotten out of control. Shiva had to lie down and have her step on him to bring her back to her senses to stop her destructiveness. And then this is Tara. Notes. Of course, Kali refers to time and the all destructiveness of time. Okay. And Tara is the goddess who acts as a guide and a protector and who offers the ultimate knowledge and grants salvation. She is the goddess of all sources of energy and very popular in Buddhist traditions as well. Oh, now I've just lost my page here. Okay, here we go. This is Trisundari. Why doesn't their name there? That's who she is anyway. Tripura Sundari is the goddess of beauty of the 3 worlds. And so she's often thought of as the Tantric Parvati. So again, the Tantric tradition will have the same goddess with a different name. And she tends to have a very beautiful countenance and brings about great peace and tranquility. And she's holding some sort of a grain here, indicating prosperity, and flowers here. So she's a very peaceful, beautiful deity. takes all kinds. Now, this is supposed to be Bhuvaneshwari, the goddess of the world mother, whose body comprises all of the 14 lokas of the cosmos. And it says here she's of fair golden complexion with 3 content eyes and a calm demeanor. And she wears red and yellow garments and decorated with ornaments on all of her limbs. Now, we find red and yellow the most frequent colors, but many times she's pictured with 4 arms. That's why I'm wondering exactly if this was identified correctly. And this one also is supposed to be Bhairavi, and it just doesn't look like Bhairavi to me. She doesn't look like she's got fierce wild hair and fiery volcanic red complexion. But this was identified as Bhairavi, and she does have lots of things going on in here. But she's got a mala here, and she's got the 2 mudras again, and a radiance. So, and this garland of skulls. So it could be somebody's concept of Bhairavi, the fierce goddess. And here we have the self-decapitated goddess, Janmastami, who severed her own head to satisfy Joya in Vijoya, that are metaphors for Rajas and Tamas. So she's getting rid of Rajas and Tamas in order to be purely sattvic. And this is the old widow, Jumavati. Again, in Jungian terms, we have the 3 overriding female archetypes of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So you can see that this is kind of the crone archetype, the old woman, indicating that everything has its cycle and things eventually decay and get old and die. She has kind of a smoky complexion, and her teeth are kind of falling out. And, she's so. This is Bhagala Mukti here, the goddess who paralyzes her enemies. She has a molten gold complexion, 3 bright eyes, and normally again wears golden or reddish garments. So I think this is one of her victims here that she's going to paralyze.
How does she paralyze them?
It doesn't say. I don't know. It says here, her 2 hands hold a mace or club and holds the demon Madanasura by the tongue to keep him at bay. And she's either seated on a throne or a crane. Here it looks like she's seated on the throne. I don't see a crane there. We're almost there. Oh yeah, this is Matangi. And she's often seen with a dark complexion, sometimes kind of a greenish complexion, often disheveled hair. I think a lot of these went to the hairdresser before they had these pictures taken. They're not as disheveled as one might picture. Various ornaments all over their delicate limbs. And she is seated on a royal throne. Normally has 4 hands, as is pictured here. And she has a sword and a skull and a Veena often, but I don't see a Veena in this particular depiction of her, but she's often depicted with a Veena. So again, you end up with a lot of variations in the way these goddesses are pictured. And our last one is Kamalatmika, the lotus goddess. So she's appropriately sitting on a lotus, and she's got two elephants over her. She's often called the Tantric Lakshmi. Again, she normally would have a golden complexion and lush black hair, 3 eyes, and sitting on the fully bloomed lotus with her 4 hands. She holds 2 lotuses while she grants her devotees wishes and assurances for protection and fear. So a lot of these had those same 2 mudras of protection and fearlessness. So you can see how complicated it gets. And of course, there are lists of names of mother, the 108 names and 1,008 names and so forth. And so by the time you get that many names and this many artists with their depictions of them, you find that it can be very confusing. But the good news is it's all one mother, and whichever image appeals to you, the symbols will have their effect. They're affecting your subconscious mind. So even if you didn't know all the details that we just talked about, the symbols have an effect on the unconscious mind in order and to connect us to the things that are more transcendent that we can't really understand. All right, so that concludes our talk. So I'll close with a chant, and then we can offer flowers, and then we'll have prasad.
Thank you.
Turn this
Any
off.
good questions too, Swami?
Oh, I suppose. I don't know if I have any answers that you can ask. Anybody have a question?
You know, that last round, you called them something, the group that had,
Mahavidyas?
yes,
Yeah,
say that again?
Mahavidyas. Of course,
What does
Vidya,
that mean?
Vidya means knowledge, so Vidya's
Oh, I
5
see.
representations of knowledge.
Thank you.
Of course.
Well, it's like different people like do well on different diets, and so the particular deity that just particularly suits your constitution and complements the things that you need and the things that will be most easily manifest within you, I think are the ones. And of course, that's where a guru comes in handy. They can intuit what you need the most. But of course, usually in our tradition, we think of Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother as embodying all of these different deities. And so when you're worshiping either one of them, you're also worshiping all the gods and goddesses along with them, including all the different avatars, including Jesus and Buddha and so forth. So that's usually the way we see it, so we don't have to get quite so complicated. But of course, in the traditional tantric tradition, or the Kashmir Shaivism or Tibetan Buddhism, then you would be going through rituals of worshiping different deities for different purposes and going through a whole cycle of rituals and so forth to achieve the goals. So that's, I think, that is a lot more complicated. So our path has kind of been simplified for us. Well, there's one thing I think I'll mention that I didn't mention before, and that's the symbolism behind Diwali. Diwali is, of course, there are many different interpretations. Of course, we do Kali Puja, and there's the Krishna defeated a demon on that day. But probably the most widespread interpretation is that Rama and Sita are returning to Ayodhya after the defeat of Ravana. So one interpretation that I've kind of come up with is to look at those characters of the Ramayana symbolically. And so Rama is the solar king, representing the male divine principle. Sita is discovered when the field is plowed up. She literally comes out of the earth. So she's the earth goddess, just as we were talking about here. That's one of the prime functions of the mother deity, is to be of the earth and being supportive of the things that come from the earth. And so then Ravana is depicted with 10 heads. Now you say, I think these Puranic stories, like the Ramayana, are based on history, but I don't think Ravana really had 10 heads. But why would he be depicted with 10 heads? Because he's got a lot of ego and he's extremely bright. You know, it's like somebody that goes to college and gets 6 PhDs by the time they're 22, you know. So he knows all the scriptures, he's done all sorts of austerities, and he's gotten boons, and but he's also got a huge ego, and his sense organs are also tenfold. And so they did very distracting. Just think how much trouble we have with one set. He's got 10, and he can't control them, and he wants what he wants, and he goes after things he shouldn't have, like Sita. And so he captures Sita. Now, so what does that represent? That means that the divine feminine is captured by the worldly sense pleasures. In other words, if we look upon the world as simply a place to enjoy things of the senses, then we have the divine feminine captured, you could say, and not in its appropriate place. And so Rama has to go back and free Sita and bring her back home. Well, where is home? Home is in our hearts. And so in Diwali, we light the path so that the divine pair comes back to home. So we are inviting them back into our hearts so that we can experience the world as a divine place rather than as just a place that is distracting. And so I think that's kind of my idea of what Diwali represents and what the whole story of the Ramayana represents. And then when you think of it, what happens at the end of some versions of the Ramayana is that Sita is entrusted by the people. They don't really think she's as pure as she claims she is, and she's put through various tests, which she passes with flying colors, and they still have trouble believing her. Well, what does that represent? That represents that, again, that we're not usually able to pierce through the disguise, okay? Maya is disguising the divinity that underlies it, and we don't usually have the ability to pierce through that and see the divinity of the manifest universe. And so it goes back into hiding. So she goes back into the earth and hides. And so that represents the normal state of consciousness of most human beings, is that they don't see the divinity in the world, and it's gone back into hiding. So just thought I'd add that in as a final touch for the day, since we just had Diwali last Sunday. All right, so now we can offer flowers.
We do have Murti of Kali and the Shiva, which are from India. And then we'll come to a Shiva Lingam from Malai as well.
Is that a Mukhi Shiva or is that the
Those have been mine. The one from Malai is from the beginning of this year. Thank you, everybody online. Thank you so much. Thank you for all being here.
Jaima, Jaima, Jaima.
We have
I don't know. We had 2 people.